Going next up, we've got a fireside chat. The topic, public sector digitization, government-centric to citizen-centric. Eman El-Fayomi, Director of Service Design, Canada Digital Service, and Mark Harrison, CEO of CX Tribe. Join me up on stage.
Thanks, Sean. Okay, so I didn't get to sing yesterday. Maybe this is my moment. One of the things I loved about that previous session was we had an opportunity to hear from practitioners. Yeah, two leaders in a business who are getting their hands dirty every single day, doing stuff. And Eman, I'll allow you to introduce yourself, but it's a privilege for me to sit here with you, as somebody who, as I look across this room and out into the virtual room, every single person here is your customer. Yeah. So we're going to get into that a little bit, because as citizens and the whole citizen experience, I guess that's something that you care passionately about. But please, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mark. It's very exciting to be here with you all today. My name is Eman El-Fayomi, and I am the Director of Service Design and Consulting with the Canadian Digital Service. If you haven't heard about the Canadian Digital Service, we are a team of about 300 humans working centrally in government and at the federal level, I should say. And we are responsible for working with all sorts of different departments to modernize a lot of the lagging services you probably hear a bunch about in the news or experience frustrations with in person when you are actually dealing with government services. So we're a small but mighty team. I lead our designers and our consultants to actually work on improving these services for the benefit of the people of Canada.
So now that we've got everyone's attention because they're customers of yours, let's dive into a little bit of this sort of government-centric to citizen-centric. So what drove that change, Eman?
So our team was established 7.5 years ago now. We were very small to start, just 15 people. And I've witnessed the growth over the last 7 years being with the team to the 300 people that we are now. In government, having designers and working in an interdisciplinary manner to improve services was something that was very new to us here in Canada. But our team was actually formed after being inspired by teams like the Government Digital Service in the UK and the US Digital Service to the south of us. Teams like this have existed for a long time in other governments around the world, specifically in-house to improve government services and keep on the cutting edge of how private sector services are constantly improving. Canada was a little bit behind, but trying to play catch up. And for us, the government services that you all need to access, there is no competition, so you can only access certain government services through government, and it's very important that we continue to improve and iterate and make sure that the omni-channel experience is as good as it can be as our world evolves.
And my limited understanding of the situation here in Canada, I guess you get different levels of government as well, so do you operate just at one level or across the entire?
So when we were established, we were just meant to operate at the federal level, which made it quite tricky because the federal level holds certain services, but so does the provinces and territories and municipalities as well. So that difference was making it a little bit challenging to work just in a silo across one level. It was really important for us to apply to get an authority to operate across all three levels of government so that we could more seamlessly tackle the different slices to different services that are actually held at different levels of government as well. So over the past 3 years, kind of post-COVID, we were able to get the authority to operate across all three levels of government, and so we have been for the past 3 years, which is very exciting. It's introduced a whole bunch of really awesome collaboration opportunities.
And I guess if I translate that into the experience that a lot of folks here are having, whether they're working within a particular department or a particular division or a particular market, I mean, it sounds as though you've been given the entire playground, to go and have some fun. So why were you given the playground?
Mostly because a lot of services, as many of you probably have faced it head on yourselves. A lot of our services were quite on fire. So I would say that whether it's immigration-related services, passport, the CRA, you name it, everything was kind of lagging behind by like 20, 30 years in some cases, where the services haven't been modernized in the way that our technology has advanced, right? And so when we say digital, our job isn't just to work on the digital side of these experiences, it's to peek behind every step of that journey, including what frontline staff have to do behind the scenes and how time-consuming it is to manage these services behind the scenes as well. And we really do think about it from an accessibility point of view too, that not everything can just transform into digital. Not everyone has access to digital. Some people really do rely on paper-based sides of systems, phone-based sides of systems, and so thinking about that omni-channel experience and how it all interacts together and how you're improving all the pieces along that journey, that's what we were tasked to do, and to bring designers into a space where there weren't previously designers at all, introduced a new challenge as well, as like, how do you make the case for this work and show the good work to inspire more of that change across government as well. So we're very much all about working in the open, having public dashboards that people can see, making sure that our code and everything that we're developing is also in the open so that we can get community-based feedback, testing with thousands of Canadians on a day-to-day basis. All of that is like central to our core values of putting people at the heart of everything we do.
Okay, so a lot there. I just want to come back and make sure I heard a couple of things. I liked what you said around, that playground and having that ability to operate at scale. Yeah, so I mean, grabbing that opportunity when it's there. Yeah. You also mentioned not just a customer or a citizen's perspective, but you mentioned the employee's perspective and actually understanding,
Absolutely.
what it means, because I'm sure in all of our businesses we've got the heroes and heroines that are doing amazing things despite, the landscape that they're being asked to operate in. So I mean, it's great to hear that you're tackling that as well.
I think government also gets sometimes a negative reputation or connotation that it's a highly political engine. Everything we see on the news and the media makes it very capital P politics, but behind the scenes there's an engine of bipartisan humans whose job it is literally just to serve Canadians, regardless of which party is in power. Those services have to meet Canadians where they need them. And so I constantly, anywhere I go, I'm just like trying to get people to see that behind the scenes there is a lot of really awesome work that needs to happen, and we could really benefit from more people considering government as a vocation when it comes to digital transformation and service design in particular.
Okay, so you're a recruiter as well today. Excellent, I like this. Okay, so we were talking about this session. You talked about the power of, we call it common or proven or standard approaches. Yeah. I'm just interested in how you go from 15 to 300, from one part of government to this part of government. Absolutely. I mean, how do you actually scale through some standard approaches?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've tackled it a few different ways, and it hasn't been perfect by any means, and we're still constantly iterating on it as well. But when we were first created, we didn't have a mandate that services have to use our services. So we really had to try to find and try to approach the recruitment of different partners across government from the point of view of where can we have the most impact very quickly? Where can we just improve things and then share that story as widely as we can so that it can generate more intake for us to be able to work on more things. And luckily, we had the budget to be able to hire people along the way as well, but we're very interested in partnering across government to help everyone kind of elevate their ability in-house to do the work on a consistent basis. So we see ourselves almost as capacity builders, trainers. We want to showcase how everyone has the ability to do this work if they just think about it a little bit differently, and then give them the tools to be able to do the work as well. So whether it be helping people procure software-based solutions to help them do the work, or actually creating, so one thing that we're working on right now is the Service and Digital Toolkit. This becomes the kind of implementation arm to something called the digital standards in government that we already have, and those are kind of like, what are our core values around transforming services in a digital manner? And then we also have something called the Service and Digital Policy Directive. That's the teeth behind the engine that kind of enables people to actually shift their systems and the machinery of government. And so a lot of that can feel like policy legalese, trying to make sense of all of these things and be like, okay, well, where am I in this process? How do I actually do this work? And so we are in the process of creating a Service and Digital Toolkit, which basically shows people how to do it at a wider scale, makes it a lot more approachable and less scary. And we're working with different teams in government, like the Canada School of Public Service and the Digital Academy, to make this training more accessible to more people in the effort of kind of just trying to get everyone up to speed at the same time.
So, I mean, you talked about several things there. That initial start point of go where the pain is, or go where the money is, or go where you can make a visible difference, I think applies for any business around it. Then, with that, I guess, comes two things. You've proven the impact, but that builds confidence in the team, which builds momentum. And with those two things, then, as you shared, more and more opportunities, you become the go-to. The team becomes the go-to partner for other bits of the organization. And then you started to codify it. So you started to put it into toolkits, into standards, into ways of working, into whatever you happen to call it, playbooks, whatever the words are, that you use around it. So you get that consistency. So now, as you start to roll it out, I can feel myself becoming equipped. I mean, I've got this sort of image of a rucksack on my back, and you're filling it with all the tools that work, because I can go and do my job. I mean, is that the right impression?
That's what we're trying to kind of galvanize everyone to feel excited about the work and the challenges. And we always say we want to fall in love with the problems. Like, our role and our job exists because we're meant to continue to push the envelope and make things better, and there's always room for improvement. And so how do we make it so that everyone else isn't also daunted by this task, but more specifically that the connotation to digitize things and to make things more efficient means that you might be nixing jobs, or getting rid of humans whose job it is to do some of this work. And we always say that we're in the business of making people's jobs a little easier so that they have more time to focus on the other mountain of problems that exist. There's so many problems behind the scenes in government that we could benefit from people having more time and energy to tackle those things that are on the shelf and haven't been touched for a long time. So it's not a matter of trying to, dwindle down the size of the public service or automate everything, but we are trying to make a difference for people so that they're less frustrated in dealing with government services. And I think that piece as well, in terms of building trust with the people of Canada, that same feeling that you all have when you hear the word government, that kind of prickly feeling, that's there for a reason. And when we are evolving our services, we need to consistently be building trust with the people of Canada and working as transparently and openly as possible. So the idea of having these public dashboards that I mentioned earlier, we were actually inspired by the UK on that, because for every government service that exists in the UK, they had these really wonderful public dashboards that told you about how the service was operating. So how many people it was serving, if there was any downtime, the click-through rate, success, all of these things were just publicly accessible for any citizen to see. And we were like, wow, imagine getting to a place where you're so confident in your government services that you're not trying to hide anything from people, and you actually believe that people seeing that will inspire even more trust at the end of the day as well. So that was something that we really wanted to put into practice in Canada as well. And for any government service that we've iterated on, we've tried to follow suit and do the exact same thing.
It's an interesting piece, isn't it? Because, often when we look at experiences, we want them all to be green, or thumbs up, or smiley faces, or whatever it is, and only when they're that will we share that information.
Right.
But you've actually taken a different approach, which is we'll share very openly where we are, and we are committed to working with you to improve that.
Yep.
And as you say it and as you talk about it, I can feel myself sort of leaning in towards that and wanting to be part of it. It's creating that immediate trust around it.
Yeah.
I wanted to do just something quite quickly, and we didn't talk about this, so I apologize. But if we just cross our arms for a minute, yeah? So, just cross your arms, okay? Now, I'd just like you to cross your arms the other way. And just describe to me how that feels. Strange, awkward, okay? So I think about this and I go, that's a tiny change, okay? But you're talking about a whole-scale shift in how people do work.
Yeah.
So if I feel that that's strange and a bit awkward, I'm really interested in how you take an organization and start to, galvanize and get people to do, particularly when you talked about it's a fear about my role is going to change. Yeah? Some of the things that come with what you're doing.
Yeah, the success stories and the case studies of seeing what it's meant for other departments. So, for example, there's one service in particular that I'm super proud that we've worked on with immigration, where we helped them create a rescheduling service for citizenship appointments, which seems like a very simple thing, a no-brainer. There's so many different calendar type services out there that exist in private sector. Bringing that into government, though, was a whole other thing, because if a citizen was trying to reschedule an appointment for their citizenship test or their ceremony at the end of the process as well, you had to send in either a letter, or if a local office somewhere in Canada was accepting emails, which was very few, you could send an email. And then a frontline staff member had to then go down to the basement, look through a ton of different shelves to find a bin that had your specific file in it with your appointment date, and then take another 20 minutes from there to actually go through the cumbersome thing of manually rescheduling you, and then sending you the new appointment, which would either be by mail or by email, depending on how you contacted them to begin with. So imagine how many days are going by and how much time it takes for one reschedule. And that date might not suit you either, because it's just an arbitrary change. Unless you've given them a date that they could finally actually accommodate, you might be stuck in this cycle for weeks on end. And so building this calendar service made it so that frontline staff could batch combine these reschedules, and it went down from 20 minutes per person to 2 minutes for 200 people. So
Sorry, just run that again. 20 minutes per person.
20 minutes per one single reschedule request.
Down to?
Down to 2 minutes for a batch of 200 people being rescheduled.
Wow.
So being able to share stats and stories like that across government, really, really does get more people on board to being oh, okay, now that I don't have to spend 20 minutes per person like this, I can actually address the other backlog of issues that I'm responsible for doing at the end of the day as a frontline staff member too.
That's an interesting bit, isn't it? Because all of a sudden, that monotony in the role that was there, that frustration, that was there, you've taken that away.
Exactly.
Yeah? I mean, you've liberated my time to go and do something that actually I care more about, I'm more motivated to go and do around it. I think there's some great examples and you referenced the UK government. So let me just talk about the UK government for a minute. So getting a new passport is something that, I guess many of us do. Yeah? And I must admit that I've had some mixed experiences around getting those passports. I have been one of those individuals who had a holiday booked and found out that their kids' passports were out of date, and realized the week before you were going on holiday that actually you needed the passports if the kids were going to come on holiday. And so having to go through that sort of urgent process, and get it all sorted. But the passport renewal process in the UK typically would take 6 to 8 weeks. You would have to get these really high quality photos, done. And then you had to get them all notarized by a certain person who had a particular role, an accountant or an engineer or a teacher, and then you had to fill in these forms that were quite complicated. Then you had to send all this information off, and then you had to just wait, hoping that you'd done everything correctly, and you've got this holiday looming.
Yeah.
The current design in the UK is I take my phone out, I take a selfie, I upload the selfie, it's checked to see whether or not it's of good enough quality. It's verified at that point. And within a week, I get my passport back.
That's amazing.
No forms to fill in, It's done online. They're saying, the government are demonstrating, I know you, I have your data, I can check that it's the same person, And I just think that, this sort of rethinking, is just phenomenal, around it, So, I mean, it's great to see,
It's being on the cutting edge of setting an entirely new standard for how you can even think about government services, right? Like, it's no longer just trying to play catch up with private sector. We're also trying to push the envelope to be like, how can we create really awesome experiences for people that even transcend what they might be used to in private sector as well? Like, why is the bar or why is the benchmark always less than, because it's seen as, oh, well, it's government, it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, it's not going to be great, it's going to be a little clunky. Like, why can't it be like, okay, wow, with an example like that could actually be a great inspiration for a whole bunch of private services that exist as well, right? Like, that we can only dream of getting to that level here in Canada with some of our services.
But I think it's an interesting space, isn't it? Because as a government, you don't actually have a competition.
Yeah, exactly.
Your customers are beholden to you. I mean, you don't actually have a choice. Around it. I mean, they could emigrate, but I mean, that's a pretty extreme choice to take. But, they need to come and use you. But that mindset or mind shift that says, actually, we're not just going to improve, we're going to set the standard in a number of areas. I mean, that's a really powerful sort of mantra, to just say, actually, we're going to be here. We're not going to compare ourselves with our competition. We're just going to provide some of the best in market services around that. And I'm sure that's a little bit like an elastic band that's constantly in tension. Because I'm sure we're going to open it up for questions in a minute, and I would just like to avoid the question that says, when are you going to fix this service for me? Because I'm sure there will be a lot of views around things that still can be improved.
Definitely.
But you've got that elastic band that's sort of working in tension where you're always pulling the organization forward around it. It's great. Okay, let me open it up and see if there's anything that sort of sparked your interest. Please. It's okay, they'll switch it on.
Yeah?
Yep.
All right. So first of all, such a fascinating conversation. I mean, it makes a lot of sense now why citizenship applications or immigration documents take so much time. So thank you for shedding light on it. I'm just curious, because in this space, I can see customer experience being the topmost priority, right? Like, because it's actually relating to citizens who are impacted by things not being in order or taking a lot of time. How do you prioritize initiatives in this space?
That's an excellent question. So we approach it kind of threefold. Some of our priorities come directly from the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's office. So when they have, so they see different dashboards that tell them which things are like very, very, very on fire. And sometimes the news motivates that as well when, you know, something is kind of making splashy headlines for being inaccessible or just super backlogged. And so that gives us like a clear indication, like we should probably go after that next, or like dig in and see like what's happening there and why don't they have enough resources to do what they need to be doing. So that's one side of it. The other side of it as well is we all get access to, Microsoft Dynamics and Power BI has a whole dashboard across government that gives you the application health for every single service and how it's doing, and what its response time is for people in Canada to go through from one step to another to another. We get all of that micro data, and so that gives us a sense of what the top tasks are in government and which ones are in need of most help as well. So we try to approach teams that way to be like, hey, we've noticed this is happening. Maybe we can help you figure out why it's happening or how to improve it. I'll say that we don't always, we're not always welcomed with open arms. So there's also some amount of advocacy that we have to do to be like, let us help you work on this. Because again, we are not a mandatory solution. That mandatory mandate is coming next year. But up until now, for the last 7.5 years, it's all been entirely optional. So we're kind of excited that the mandatory aspect is coming. But that being said, we do have to get a little creative with making the case to actually be able to work on a particular service. Yeah.
But lots of people will recognize a similar prioritization, you know, a leadership agenda that's set. So in your case, the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's office.
Yeah, and the ministers and their mandate letters also tell us what some priorities are too.
So a leadership agenda that's there. Across the journeys, you're seeing different bits of performance where you can identify, here's improvements that need to get made around it. And a proactive bit where you're seeing from feedback, from citizens,
Yes.
Okay, this is where we need to act around it.
Yeah.
Great. Other questions? We've got one over here.
Thank you. Hello?
Yep.
So being in government, how do you find that balance between the experience being like you guys have to be authoritative, right? And sometimes your copy on your sites come off as too authoritative compared to being more user-friendly, especially you're talking about new immigrants coming in and they don't know whether they completed the journey from point A to point B. But really, you guys are trying to show that you're firm and strict and we're the Canadian government. Like, how do you find that balance between authoritative yet user-friendly?
I love this question. So one of the types of skills that we employ in government now are content designers. And content designers are really strictly responsible for taking the legalese of government and making it much more approachable to Canadians and much more clear and simple to understand. So leaning on that immigration example that you just gave, we redesigned the letters that people receive when they've been told they've been accepted formally into the process and they've got like their citizenship test coming up or their ceremony coming up. And those letters used to be very dry, very authoritative, filled with a ton of legalese where it's like, what are you asking me to do here? It's like not actually clear what I need to bring or where I need to go. So we redesigned that entirely, and the tone of the letter was something that we also focused on as well. So the letter would kind of just address you as like, dear sir or madam, like this is where you are in the process, and like just kind of getting down to brass tacks. We started off by being like, congratulations, like we know that this is like a really big deal to finally reach this milestone, right? So just that shift in giving people like a warm welcome in this letter, we noticed a difference, and then of course making it more clear and everything like that as well. But this idea that government needs to be super authoritative and strict to be respected is also just like a misconception, because we know other governments around the world have transformed their content to be a lot more plain language and simple to understand. So we're trying to approach the way that we design things that way too.
So what you're doing is you're understanding that your citizens, your customers, have a set of needs.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And those needs are both emotional and rational.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, I want to feel congratulated.
Exactly,
Yeah?
yeah. And trust and respect come from making sure we have other things in place. So making sure we're using a standard letterhead, that, we don't send like spammy text messages and things like that, right? Like there are other like design affordances that you can include in whatever it is that you're creating that will inspire that trust a lot more than just needing to lean on like authoritative language.
And I guess, lots of commercial entities face the same thing, whether I'm sitting in a regulated business or I need to, convey certain information. I've got a choice in terms of how I convey that and the tone that I use and
Exactly.
how I bring the brand to life.
Yeah.
There was a question at the back.
Thank you so much for shaking that comment and taking my question, but really it's more of an observation that points to you for bringing up that example of the passport. Just in the last 2 weeks, I went through that very same process with my daughter applying for her UK passport, and it couldn't have been easier. Like everything from being able to upload the picture myself, the tracking that goes along with it. It would tell me every step of the way, like where the witness that we've got to send the passport to verify my daughter's identity. It would give me feedback instantly back. It would give me steps along the way to do so. And it was a really seamless integration. It was so well done. I honestly thought it was a scam at first, because the picture, I could just upload any picture I wanted, because I honestly, in my heart of hearts, going through that, the rigmarole, having to even go to the photo studio to get your passport taken was just a nightmare. But this was super easy, and it was really good. So thank you for sharing that, because that really resonated with me.
Great. And what a great way to end.
Yeah.
So, Eman, thank you
Thank
very
you
much
so
for taking
much.
some time.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Thank you.